Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Quigley on Divorce, a behind-the-scenes look. I'm joined again by two of my top team members, Shana Vitek and Jordan Rosenberg. Guys, thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So as you can tell, we're all in our little boxes here in the virtual world of Zoom, quarantined and sheltered and whatever else you want to call it, trying to get the word out. But it's really in these crazy times that we've encountered in our own cases and some around the other jurisdictions, some very interesting issues, and most of which seem to be centered around parenting issues. And, you know, again, people are struggling to do what's best for the health of their children and their families. We candidly probably have some cases we're involved with where people are trying to be spiteful and vindictive and trying to use kids to get back at the other parent. And so how do you balance all of those issues in this world where we're being told to stay at home, don't go between residences, but yet we've got children in the middle of parents divorcing or already divorced, and we have schedules that say mom should have these days, dad should have these days. And what do we do about it? And so we've got some instances in our own, representing our own clients that we can speak of. Jordan and I had a matter, Shannon and Jordan dealt on something recently. There was a case in Florida. But generally speaking, guys, what is it that, what is it that you guys are seeing as far as the hot buttons around parenting issues?
So I think that the main thing has been that, there's a specific order in the governor's, big order that he put out that says parenting time is essential travel. It should remain as scheduled. And so I think the courts are upholding that unless there is some circumstance that would really put the kids' safety or best interest at risk. And so that's what we've kind of been advising people, that if it's just, you're worried because your ex, went to the grocery store or that kind of thing, that's not going to fly. But if there's extenuating circumstances, that may be considered. And that's, I think, what was so interesting about the case of the doctor in Florida, is that she was basically being forced to choose between doing her job, saving lives, and losing the parenting time with her daughter. And so I think it was ultimately reversed, because if that type of thing were to go on, we can't have doctors and nurses and all the other frontline workers saying, well, sorry, I can't come to work because I don't want to lose my rights with my children. So I think it's got to be something compelling in order to change the parenting schedule.
Well, that's interesting, because that Florida case, I think, is the perfect storm illustrating, really the extreme issues in a case like this. If you have a frontline, doctor who's dealing with patients with, COVID virus, and by the way, I think, first of all, we would be remiss if all of us didn't extend our gratitude and appreciation to doctors, nurses, paramedics, police, fire, all the people that are really doing that kind of work. We have the luxury of sitting in our home offices and, Zooming with each other while they're out dealing with this. But that also is, if I'm a parent and I'm divorced and my ex-spouse is a doctor and is working with people who actually have this very serious virus, I would rightfully be concerned for my children's health. And it may not be out of spite for my ex-spouse. It might genuinely be because I'm concerned about the health of my children. And so that's, in effect, a balancing act that I think the courts are really having to grapple with now.
Right. And I guess the bottom line is there's no law for what governs this stuff during an unprecedented pandemic that no one's seen before. So a lot of the counties, actually, the different counties have been doing their own, microcosms of what the governor's order is. And a lot of counties are saying, listen, coming to court on a quote unquote emergency to address parenting issues related to the COVID virus are not encouraged, because again, like Shana was saying, it's very in the governor's order, it's saying exchanges and parenting time are essential. So for those purposes, you're able to do that. And we had a case the other day where we're getting calls and saying, well, my ex is around his or her, boyfriend, and their boyfriend has kids, and our kids are around those kids, and the it goes on and on and on in terms of how do you manage self-quarantining and abiding by social distancing. So we actually had a case the other day where it was sort of that scenario. And in Lake County, we had an emergency hearing where the ex-wife wanted to prevent the husband from taking their children to visit his girlfriend and her children in Wisconsin. And really what they had said is that, well, they attached a letter from the pediatrician saying, well, if you can avoid it, then you should avoid travel, just like the governor says, and avoid non-essential travel. But really at the end of the day, she didn't really have any other reason other than to just say, listen, I'm concerned. And so we went in front of the judge, and the judge relied on this, basically that any possibility of, the girls and the kids being infected, I mean, he said we're speculation. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, I think that what they're saying is, listen, everybody is presumed to be making the best decisions as it relates to their children. And you can't be micromanaging what the other parent is doing, except for if there is a serious emergency, and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take our kids on a flight and then travel down by foot in a bus with 30 other people, and then go to a parking lot where there's going to be 50 other people congregating with other people. I mean, I'm kind of getting lost, but it's really a little bit, gray, and we get these situations over and over.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot packed into that, and there's, I think, a fundamental difference with a general order from a governor saying parenting schedules remain in effect. That's fine, but to me, that just is dealing with mom and dad exchange on this state, we're still doing that. When you interject, and by the way, we were successful in our client's position in that, Jordan, in allowing him to be able to go to Wisconsin to spend time with his girlfriend, with his girlfriend's children. That's a hard, again, we're advocates, but I could see that argument, and I could see as a parent being concerned. I don't know what that girlfriend is exposed to. I don't know what that girlfriend's children are being exposed to. And Shana, we had a similar issue, that was litigated in another out-of-state issue. Can you tell the viewers and listeners kind of the facts and how that played out?
So the issue that we recently had was somebody who was coming from out of state and going to be flying on a plane and staying in a hotel. And so to us, there's obviously several different additional risk factors other than just driving from one house to the other. And ultimately, the judge said, listen, I understand where you're coming from. However, in the child's best interest, it's going to be better if you wait and do that in a few weeks when things have reopened, and it's going to be safer. So there's definitely situations where I think it makes sense, but it's hard. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, we have clients who are working in hospitals, and they are choosing themselves to stay away from their children for a certain period of time. And that's, there's no right answer. This is, like we've all said, an unprecedented situation, and we're all just making the best decisions that we can for ourselves and our family. So I think unless it's something that, like in that example, that really could and should be avoided, that it's, going to defer to the parent's judgment.
Yeah, and that's something, and Jordan, we've spoken on this in other episodes where, we'd like to think that people would operate with some modicum of common sense. And that's, like, Shana, you mentioned that some mental health, not mental health, but, doctors and nurses and clients of ours that are self-quarantining themselves from their own children. They're recognizing this is a short window of time, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I am very much on the front line of this, being exposed to this. And the last thing I want to do is pass that on to my children. So, maybe they're doing more Zoom technology and they're connecting with their children in other ways. It would be horrible as a parent, as we are, to have to find yourself in that position. But again, common sense is really something that, we've seen in our practice that it's not always being practiced by everyone that we're dealing with.
Right. And nobody is going to hold that against a parent for doing that, to say moving forward, oh, you gave up this time with your kids. I mean, this is
right.
This is huge. So nobody's going to be able to use that against a parent who acted in the best interest by not seeing their kids.
Right. And I mean, I think to the contrary a little bit, I think we've also had a lot of clients that have been able to work out disputes as it relates to parenting time during this time. I had a case where it was the husband's year for spring break, and he lived out of state in Georgia, and his ex-wife and 2 children lived here in Illinois. And instead of him coming here and self-quarantining and then spending spring break, with the kids here, they were able to work it out where our client would have spring break this year, and then he would have the next 2. And so I think there's been a lot of success stories about people kind of coming together and keeping the kids' best interests at the forefront.
Yeah.
And we've had a battle, with some lawyers to get people to kind of see the light on some of that. Jordan and I had a case where mom just decided, you're not seeing our children, and for 3 weeks straight withheld them. And we were finally able to say, okay, because now the courts are allowing us to file motions, and they'll deal with things through Zoom and conferences, and the judges will make some decisions on these issues. In that case, they relented and not only said, fine, let's have a week, but let's have a makeup week, and let's at least try to be fair so that the kids are being able to enjoy mom and dad on some safe and practical level. So I think when you look at these issues, it is, and maybe it was Shana or Jordan who said this, it really is a case-by-case basis. And there's no template for this, because most of us have not been around since 1917 or whatever the last pandemic was, and everyone's really trying to do their best to manage this. Everybody is trying to stay healthy. We want our children to be healthy and safe. And again, your facts and circumstances are going to be different than any other case. And so you cannot predict necessarily what's going to happen. But if you have those concerns, you rightfully have a right to consult with your attorney and consider whether or not your children, are safe. And if you have these issues, again, we've had sort of a mixed bag where Jordan and I, with the case, they allowed our client to be able to take the children to visit a girlfriend in Wisconsin. Shana's case, where the father, who normally would come in from New York, a judge said, nah, that's not a good idea. So we got a mixed bag. And Shana, there were some other issues in that too, in that, the father hadn't really exercised parenting time for.
To your point, on a case-by-case basis, I mean, it could have been the other way if 1 or 2 of the facts had been different. I mean, I don't know why anybody would fly right now or stay in a hotel if they didn't have to. So to me, that was kind of, that's kind of common sense. I mean, again, you understand people want to see their kids, for sure. We all understand that. But at the end of the day, this is the situation we're in. We have to live in it the best we can.
Yeah. So again, in these trying times, in these situations where family time is probably more important now than ever, I think a lot of people have heightened anxieties. You don't know what to believe. You hear this, you hear that, and I think all of us, have a healthy respect for the coronavirus and the impacts that it can have. And so, with that as a backdrop, families still have to exist. They have to interact. Children need their parents, parents need their children. And so, you know, with all of that said, if you have questions, you know, if you're concerned, I think someone mentioned in one of the cases, our client consulted with a pediatrician. It's a smart thing to do. Get a medical opinion as a starting point. Speak with us, speak with your lawyers. Try to get some sense of what makes sense. By the way, and Shana is amidst many hats that she wears, is a trained mediator. And so Shana will do mediations. We've worked with other mediators where, you know, maybe mom and dad don't quite agree. And since we can't, you know, always get the courts to act quickly, maybe getting into a conversation with a mediator that can help each person see the other side, that's a great idea. And that's something that's readily available to all of us as attorneys. So there are some solutions, there are options. Everybody keeps a level head, exercises common sense, and kind of works through this together. I think we'll all be all right, and we'll protect children in the process, which is really at the forefront of all of this. So we thank all of you guys for taking time out. Hopefully with the extra time that everyone has, you're listening more and more to our podcast. Again, Quigley on Divorce, a behind the scenes look. Thanks again to Shana Vitek, Jordan Rosenberg, two of the you know, premier attorneys on my team here at Beermann. We're available to you. Feel free to call us, email. We can jump on Zoom conferences with you, but we're working. We're here for you to answer questions and to help you through these tough times. Thanks again.
Thanks.